Hello, Truth Nation. This is Mike Martin with the Platinum Truth. We're back again today for another episode. We're going to be doing a reaction video once again, looking at Al Jazeera's coverage of the Iran war. We're going to take a look at the bias that goes into this coverage and how they frame this war for their audience. Let's jump right in.
Welcome to the truth, the Platinum Truth. Are you ready? Live from Miami, Florida, USA, and broadcasting around the world. You're listening to the Platinum Truth Podcast, the show that covers everything going on that you need to know about. The people have voted. Are you ready? And now, here's your host, Mike Martin.
Well, joining us now to discuss this and all the latest developments in the conflict is Zaidoun al-Khanani, who is the founding director of the Arab Perspectives Institute. Thank you so much, Zaidoun, for being with us on Al Jazeera. So Trump says they're talking. Iran denies this. Who should we believe? Are both sides deliberately saying different things for strategic reasons, you think?
The talks are certainly happening. It's very hard to believe that such a level of a conflict is taking place and there are no talks happening. The question is, how serious are the talks and to what level is it, and who are in those negotiation talks?
Yeah.
Some talks would be focused on the militarized aspect of it, and some talks would be looking at the long-term objectives and what would a future look like post this war. And this is what Trump is proposing. Now, if we notice the rhetoric of Trump, which went from a complete surrender to possibly negotiating the lifting of the sanctions with the current regime as it looks like today, it either means that Trump is accepting some amendments to the objectives or the conditions he put on the table from the first day of the war based on what's happening, what's taking place on the ground, or he is aware of what the Iranians would be hoping for in the long-term future, which is limiting the ballistic missiles and not completely eliminating it.
I'll ask you.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a reasonable approach. What he's essentially saying is that the reason why Trump is looking to have these talks is to either back down from his desire for all-out capitulation by the Iranian regime, or that Trump understands that the Iranians are going to want to negotiate and are willing to play ball, essentially. There's not a lot of differentiation between the two things that he said, but he is really framing this in these perspectives only from, you got to understand, he's not sitting in these rooms. None of us are sitting in these rooms, so we don't actually know the reason why these talks are happening. A lot of time these talks are happening for multiple reasons. They could be happening because they actually do want to settle this war in a way that is not a regime change or not in line with the initial goals. But also there's all kinds of reasons why you have these talks. You have these talks because you want to take a break. You want to sort of resupply yourself and send the message to the world, that you're willing to talk peace. You're demonstrating to the world, look, we're willing to just talk about this. We don't necessarily have to do this with force. While you have no real intentions of that, you're just playing a PR game. And the PR game is a massive part of having a war. I mean, it's almost, at the end of the day, the underlying sort of foundation of having a war is sending out these messages that either are genuine or are to confuse your adversary. And I think Trump, and I've thought this for a long time, is often saying things that he is purposely looking to confuse the Iranians, confuse the Iranian regime. He wants them to believe and to think that this guy is unpredictable. He doesn't know what he wants one day from the other. He wants to give them this impression for all kinds of reasons. One of which is that if you are constantly shifting what you want, you sound like this one day and sound like this another, and then flip flop back and forth. Um, unpredictably, then you send the message to your adversary that, hey, when there's a chance to talk, when there's a chance to not continue with force, you better take it. You better take it because you don't know when it's coming next. So, he is speculating. We're all kind of speculating, in fairness to him, but to suggest that the two possibilities are the only things that are out there is obviously absurd. I think he should really be honest with the audience and say, I don't actually know this. I'm speculating. There could be all kinds of other reasons, but let's continue.
A bit more about this reported 15-point plan that the Trump administration has come up with to end the war. But before that, the mixed signals, Zaidoun, from the U.S., it would seem. On the one hand, they're talking about negotiations, but on the other hand, there's also a troop buildup, deploying more troops to the region, reportedly. What should we make of this?
Well, that's exactly what you want to do in a situation like this. And that's why Trump is so good at this kind of stuff. No matter what people are saying online, and I know there's a ton of people out there that are saying things like, "Oh, Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He didn't anticipate this, or he's gone in over his head," and it's absolutely absurd. If you don't understand that, first of all, the approach to Iran has been something the US government and all of its institutions, including the intelligence agencies, including the military, have been strategizing in dozens of different capacities and methods and methodologies on how to approach this. You don't know what you're talking about, and you need to study more. This has been something the U.S. government, with all of the institutions, have had a plan for since essentially '79, when this Iranian regime showed up and demonstrated to the world, to the United States, that it is an adversary of the United States. It is something that wants to destroy the United States, destroy the existing world order. So, you know, approaching this kind of thing, a war, with all kinds of confusion and various ways to go about it, and flip-flopping back and forth, is exactly the right approach. Exactly the right approach. It is not some sort of strategic blunder or some sort of inconsistent behavior, at least not it's inconsistent by design, at the very most, most, as far as agreeing with sort of her the way she's kind of framing it, and the way a lot of people have framed it, that Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He's putting out a peace plan while at the same time building troops up and sending them. Yeah, that's what you want to do. You kind of want to say, hey, I'm willing to talk peace. I'm willing to work this out around the boardroom table, or we can do this a hard way. And by the way, they're already coming, the troops, so I'm increasing the pressure and leverage by sending them.
Why are they doing this, do you think?
It's a natural reflection of the lack of a clear objective here. Trump went from negotiating a complete surrender to possibly negotiating a way out.
Yeah. What are you talking about? That's not that's an indication of not having a clear direction. That's exactly what you want to do. That's exactly how you want to turn the pressure up on your adversaries, is to have these options for your adversary and say to them basically, hey, I'm good with either of them. I'm good with destroying you or sitting around the table and us being buddies. This is why Trump understands negotiations. And one of the key aspects, maybe even the biggest thing to remember, and the way to approach negotiations, is that you got to demonstrate to the person on the other side of the table that you care less than they do on getting this deal done. You're willing, i.e., that is, you're willing to walk away from a potential deal. If you don't get what you want, you're willing to walk away more than the other person is, in a greater desire than the other person is, in less hesitancy than the adversary or the person you're negotiating with is. That's the essence of a negotiation. You always want to be in that position in a negotiation, that at the end of the day, you will walk away and you don't care about doing it. It's fine with you if you do it. So this guy saying that it's a demonstration that Trump is inconsistent and doesn't have a clear vision, he is either he either doesn't understand negotiating, doesn't understand even the basic foundation of negotiating, the basic aspect of strategy when it comes to negotiation, or he's just dishonest and he's trying to tell the audience, hey, Trump is an idiot, he's a buffoon, he doesn't know what he's doing. And I think it's the latter, because if I thought it was the former, if I thought this guy just doesn't understand negotiations, I would think he's an idiot. I would think he's really dumb. And I'm actually being kind and extending the benefit of the doubt to him that he's not that stupid, that he does understand what's going on and he's being dishonest. And it's incumbent upon Al Jazeera as a supposed journalism outfit to really call him on that. So let's see if they do.
This is perhaps due to not having a plan B. And
Not having a plan B. Are you serious, dude? You think Trump and the administration and all the generals around him and the intelligence, they don't have a plan B? Listen, dude, they not only have a plan B, they have a plan C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z, and then multiples of the entire alphabet. I guarantee you. That's all they do all day. And that's, by the way, all think tanks do all day. That's why you bring in think tanks to help you analyze and strategize. This guy appears to run a think tank in his name. So to suggest there's no plan B, what are you talking about? I mean, this is him actually doing the opposite of what I did towards him, which is I gave him the benefit of the doubt, not being a buffoon, not being an idiot. And he's doing the opposite towards Trump. He's doing the opposite towards Trump. Think about that. Nobody knows who this guy is. Nobody knows who his company is. He's sitting on Al Jazeera. No one's ever going to remember his name after this. But he's looking at the president of the United States and saying the man doesn't know what he's doing and is incapable of coming up with a plan B. I mean, is that arrogance or is it stupidity? Which one? You decide. Maybe put it in the comment section. Do you think that's arrogance or stupidity?
going along with Israel's plan and continuing this complete regional chaos, which possibly could result into a long-term conflict in Iran, which it seems like Israel was hoping that the U.S. would permanently take the front seat. It seems like the Trump administration forgot that there are midterm elections in October and November, which means
The Trump administration seems to have forgot there's midterm elections. Like, again, are you serious? Are you being serious right now? Maybe that was sarcasm, but why would you even say it if it's sarcasm? It's just stupid. Like, you really think so? Listen, I'll tell you something. The Americans have perfected a lot of things, and one of them is the game, the art of politics. They fully understand how every single decision is going to reflect on the next election, or whatever the political situation is at the time. I don't know how this guy can say such a thing. I mean, now we're starting to see what's happening here is he's not coming at this in a intellectually honest manner, but instead just somebody who wants to smear the Trump administration, make them look stupid, make them look like they know what they're doing. He's suggesting that Israel pull if you caught it, Israel pulled the U.S. Pulled Trump into this. Both countries obviously have their own goals and have their own desire to do this, and for separate reasons, and a lot of it is overlapping. That's why they're doing it together. But you can go at something like this, Israel and the United States, while having similar goals, similar interests, but also different end destinations or different places you're fine with settling. And that's exactly what's happening here. Israel has certain goals. I assure you, Israel wants a regime change, and understandably so, because this is an opportunity, and they've always desired opportunity, and it makes sense why they would, to get this regime out of power, so they can so they can have good relations with the Iranian people and the nation of Iran, just like they did pre 1979, pre the Islamic occupation of Iran. They always had a good relationship with Iran. The Persian people are not some sort of inherently anti-Semitic Jew haters. They're not like the Arabs. The Arabs have this strain in them that is immensely powerful and goes back a long, long ways. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of years goes back. Persian people are very different. They get along with Jews. They've never had a problem with Jews. Never had a problem with State of Israel pre this Islamic takeover of Iran. So you have these two countries, Israel and the US, they both have similar goals or interests for their nations that largely overlap, but in some ways don't. So, and if you believe that Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, is a man that lets anybody lead him in a way that he doesn't want to go, you haven't been paying attention. You don't know what you're talking about. It's inconsistent with all of the facts. We've heard many times over, you can just go Google this on what Trump's view is of Iran under these mullahs, under these nutty Islamic zealots. And he's been talking about this not just going back to Obama's days as president, but in the 90s, even in the 80s. Trump has been talking about taking Karg Island long time ago. He understood the strategy behind that before anybody was talking about it. So it makes absolutely no sense that Trump has been led in this way by Israel or by Netanyahu when Trump has been talking about his feelings of Iran, his desire to take this government out, take this evil government out, and free the Iranian people, but even more so, have someone in place that is not chanting death to America. He's been talking about this forever. So it's totally ridiculous to say that he got led into this war. When did he get led into this war? Like in the 70s? Because in the 80s and 90s and onward, he's been saying the exact same thing he's doing today. It makes absolutely no sense.
That a prolonged conflict wouldn't make sense, statistically speaking. Economically speaking, we're seeing a potential economic crisis in the U.S. and
We're not seeing a potential economic crisis. We're not even close to it yet. We're not even close to it. It's going to take a lot more months. The oil's going to have to go up to 140, 150 a barrel and up before we start even thinking about anything like that. This guy is way too premature, and because he's trying to convince the audience of something that's not the case right now.
current economic crisis, globally speaking.
So what does winning look like for either side at this point? I mean, Trump says they're winning.
Let's see what he says.
The Iranian says we're still in this. What is a victory for either side at this point?
I'm going to tell you. Let me just put in my 2 cents here. What winning looks like for all three sides, because there's not two sides here. There's three sides. You have the Iranians, the Iranian regime. Sorry, did you actually say there's four sides? Because there's the Iranian people, there's the Iranian regime. Two different things. You have the Israelis, who are generally in line with their their population, and the American administration, Trump, who is generally in line with the American people and the body politic, for that matter, including the Democrats. The Democrats are just saying nonsense, talking about this war is illegal, blah blah blah. But they agree with all this stuff. They're just trying to get one over politically and trying to gain power in the midterms. But they all support this stuff. So there's these four sides: the Persian people, the Iranian government, the Israeli government people, the American government and people. The Israelis. Let's start with the Israelis. The Israelis want regime change. The Israelis need regime change. If they don't get regime change, they're just going to keep continuing this. And remember, if they get regime change, this opens up so much possibilities for peace in the Middle East, peace with Israel and all of the other nations, the GCC nations, in a capacity that a lot of people have a problem understanding, really grasping the intensity of how large this would be for the state of Israel, for the Middle East, to be a place that is no longer constantly inflamed with war, but instead a place that is growing, that is building things, making things better for their respective nations. If you take out Iran for Israel, what you have then is you have an ability to start signing peace deals with many, many more countries in the Middle East, in the GCC nations. It allows these countries to take off the handcuffs that is the Iranian regime that is putting pressure through propaganda inside these GCC countries towards the governments there. You're not going to have this inflamer, this presence in your country coming from Iran to stir the pot inside your countries to try to prevent those GCC nations from having formal peace treaties with Israel like they do with Jordan, with Egypt. And the Saudis want to be next. There's the UAE wants to be next. All these countries want to line up and sign peace deals with Israel, but they need to do it in a way where they don't have a distraction coming from Iran, inflaming tensions inside these countries to not do these peace deals. So you take that out, you open up the opportunity for all these GCC nations to start doing what they really want to do, which is as I'm talking about, as the governments really want to do, is to make peace with Israel, to start trade, to start building things and making the lives of their people better. But also what this does is, if you take out Iran, you do the same thing that is essentially happening with Cuba when the US took out Maduro. Uh, the Cuban government under communism has never been able to function on by itself, has never been able to put together a system in place that creates a good life for their people. So they had to. So the Cuban government has essentially gone from different nation to different nation to different nation as a client state. In the when Castro took over Cuba, they went straight towards the Soviet Union and became a client state of the Soviet Union. What happened when the Soviet Union fell? Well, they had no client to back them, to send money their way, to inject money their way, and therefore they couldn't be a client state of the Soviet Union anymore. So who did they turn to right after that? They turned to Venezuela. Venezuela became the puppet of or the partner, the senior partner to the Cubans, providing them with oil to run their economy and trading that oil for services coming out of Cuba, like doctors. Cuba would send doctors into Venezuela for oil. When Maduro was taken out, and Trump understood this, everybody understood this, you take out Maduro, you then take out the person, the people that are supporting the Cuban government. It was the Soviet Union that fell. They couldn't function without a country sending free stuff their way and using them as a client state. So they went to Venezuela. When Maduro was taken out, look what's happening now. The country is falling apart. Well, the same thing is going to happen when you take out Iran and that Islamic regime, that terrorist sponsoring Islamic regime. You're going to you're going to weaken and destroy effectively the power of all of the terrorist organizations that are fighting, the proxies of Iran that are fighting Israel. You're going to take them out. You're going to weaken them to the point where they're not going to have a constant supply of weapons, a constant supply of cash, a constant supply of ideological fervor and energy coming their way to recruit more people. So Hezbollah in Lebanon and across the Middle East, including the entire world, is not going to be able to function, or at least not in the capacity that you have seen it function in the powerful way it has been in the last few decades. It's going to collapse. And Lebanon wants it to collapse as well. The state of Lebanon, the government of Lebanon, because Hezbollah in Lebanon is effectively nothing more than an insurgent militia. So once you take out Iran, Hezbollah weakens to the point of falling apart, or at the very least weakening so that Israel can finally go in and finish them off. Same thing with Hamas. Same thing with Hamas in these so-called Palestinian territories like Gaza and the West Bank. You weaken Hamas because now they don't have a client state to feed them weapons, cash, inject zealotry into their cause so that they can keep recruiting suicide bombers and other zealots in Gaza, in the West Bank. You do that for the Islamic Jihad organization. You do that for all of these terrorist groups that are fighting Israel. Okay, you weaken all of them. And so this is why it's so important for Israel to overthrow this evil regime. It has a cascading effect on what it does for Israel. And it's understandably so. I mean, you take out this head of the snake and the rest will wither away, particularly with pressure. So Israel needs regime change. That's the end goal. If they don't achieve it, they're just going to continue this way of life, the constant bombarding of missiles and violence towards them through the next several decades until they have another opportunity to take out this regime. And that's not going to come for a long, long time, I don't believe. So this is a key moment to take them out. They have to do this. It's very important. Now on the flip side or now on the ally side of Israel for the United States. The United States is essentially in the same position. They can afford to not have a regime change much more so than Israel can. Much more so. But they don't want that either. Trump is putting his entire presidency and not just that, his legacy of himself as president for both 4 years he was in power. He's putting it on the line. And the only way it's going to be a secure legacy, a legacy that will be celebrated, a legacy that will be seen for what President Trump wants it to be, is if there's a regime change. If there isn't, he will essentially go down foreign policy wise, particularly around the Middle East, as a failure. He is gambling everything on this. And I assure you, he understood that going into this. He is gambling. If there's anyone that understands politics and legacy, it's Donald Trump. It's President Donald Trump. And so he went into this with this goal, knowing he's gambling it all. He's gambling his entire legacy, essentially his entire foreign policy. Decades from now, what people are going to remember is the result of this Iranian war and nothing else. It doesn't matter with the 12, 13 peace deals he's made around the world. People are not going to be talking about that in decades to come. They're going to be talking about this. They're going to be talking about it in the context, in the framework of how the result goes. So he understands this. At the end of the day, America can afford a not a regime change. They can afford something short of a regime change, essentially collapsing the government, taking away all their power, their ability, their military might. But it will be seen. Let's be real here. It will be seen as a loss around the world. It will be seen as a deterioration of American influence. It definitely will be. So the Americans also need regime change. And that's why this war, I predict, will last most likely longer than just the next few weeks. And it will last as long as it needs to be. Trump will sacrifice losing Congress for this, losing the House, the Senate, both. He'll sacrifice it. He has to. He understands he has to now. So, and by the way, this is for me. I look at this as such a bold move, and such a move that everybody should be celebrating and be in awe of. For a man to believe in a cause, in an action, to such a degree that he's willing to risk his entire presidency and legacy on something he believes in. What do we call that? We call that leadership. That is real leadership. What we've had as presidents in the United States, and frankly, as leaders around the world in the West, is these spineless so-called leaders that will only do things, will only back up the things they say they believe in the capacity of it being safe and good for them. And if it's not safe and good for them, they won't do it, which tells you a lot about their integrity. Okay. Integrity is doing as you say and saying as you do. And that includes when it's difficult and when it costs you a lot. And Trump is showing true leadership. This is exactly the leadership that every country hopes to have. They, you hope to have this kind of leader that's willing to do difficult things and risk it all for a greater outcome. And so that's the goal of the United States. That's really the necessity. It's regime change. If they're not going to be able to get that, then they have to get a complete dismantling of the nuclear program and also the military might of Iran, the intercontinental missiles. You have to destroy that capacity, and the only way you can really ensure that, particularly on the nuclear weapon side, is if you have a government in there that's going to be willing to allow you in and inspect that. And we know that keeping the existing regime in that's not going to happen. Okay, so at the end of the day, you then fall back right then to regime change because you'll never be able to trust this government. They're always going to lie, cheat, and steal their way to a nuclear weapon. So the only you can't even trust that if you're going to destroy their nuclear program, in what you see and what you're able to destroy today, you're only going to be back there years from now, a decade max, doing the same thing. And Trump understands you can't risk that because Trump understands there will be a day when you get another Obama and Biden in the form of maybe AOC or Gavin Newsom or even Bernie Sanders, where you get a weak president that is going to be a weak and or stupid, dumb president that is going to be either too dumb to understand and will believe the Iranians when they say they don't want nuclear weapons, aren't trying to achieve it. They'll either fall for it or even worse, a weak president and a traitorous president like AOC would do, like even Gavin Newsom would do, like basically the whole Democrat Party, except for maybe Fetterman at this point, would do, which is to allow them to have nuclear weapons because that president, that Democrat president, won't want to do anything about it. They won't want to take any kind of hits or sacrifices. So Trump understands that. Trump understands that eventually there will be an American president that will fuck this up and will provide the Iranians the opportunity to get those nuclear weapons, and that's what the Iranians have been banking on for decades. So that's what's going on the Israeli side, on the American side, on the Iranian side. Let's talk about first the goal of the Iranian people. The Iranian people want regime change. When you see thousands of people out on the streets of Tehran, even like tens of thousands, it doesn't mean anything. There are 5, 10%, maybe even 15% of supporters for the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime is big. It's the IRGC, it's the Besiege organization that is on the streets, making sure that the people are abiding by these harsh rules that they don't want in place with regards to covering their faces, acting in the way that the regime wants them to act. There's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of essentially government employees, right? So you got to remember, if you're a government employee, if you're part of the IRGC, which has tens of thousands at the very least, if not a few 100,000 people in it, you're going to get those people supporting this. They want the status quo. Those are the people you're seeing on the streets. Essentially, the government people, the people who are benefiting from this, the zealots. What you're also seeing is their family members, because this is the kind of place that you send your family members out there as well if you're part of the government. Maybe they're not part of the government directly, but they support their husband, their brother, their nephew, their niece. They either support it voluntarily or because they're told to, they're forced to. This is where these thousands of people are coming from. But at the end of the day, it's a tiny slice. It's 5, 10, maybe 15% of the entire population. And when you have 5, 10, 15% of the population wanting something that the rest of the 85, 90, 95% don't want, you are just being held captive as a people. you're being held hostage by a tiny few. That's why they don't want real democracy, is because they know if it ever came to the people deciding, all this shit would go away. All these people benefiting from the status quo, this evil regime and their family, they would all go have to get a real job, and their place in society would turn immediately into something that turned into making way less more money, having way less status, importance in that society. All these people know it. They're told to go out there. Don't be fooled by the 30,000 people in Tehran or even 100,000. 100,000 is nothing when you're talking about 91 million people. It's nothing. Think about it. Not 1 million out of 91 million is about 1 and a bit percent. Okay. It's about 1 and 1.1%, 1.2%. Okay. It's about 1.1. That's a million. So let's say you have 100,000. That's 1/10 of a million. Now you're talking about 1/10 of 1%. So 0.1% is when you're talking about 100,000 people in Tehran. Sounds like a lie. That's 0.1%. 1/10 of 1% actually supporting this government, while the 99.9% are right now being told, stay in your house, don't come out. Don't come out like you did a couple months ago. Just stay. We have a plan for this. We're going to call you out when the time is right. Right now, it's dangerous. It's not the right time to come out. But you're going to see the people come out. You're going to see the people come out like they did 2 months ago. You're going to see them come out like they've done a dozen times in the last 10, 20 years. You're going to see that. It's coming. Don't let anybody like stupid people like Max Blumenthal and these bozos online that are saying things like, where are the people? They haven't come out. We were told they're going to come out. They're being actually told not to come out. They're being told by their own king. The Pahlavi is telling them, don't come out. Don't come out yet. This is not the time. I will tell you when to come out. Trump said the same thing. So the Persian people are listening. It's not time to come out. They will come out. So the Persian people want regime change. They know this is their opportunity. They know if this doesn't happen now, it's not going to happen for a long, long time and maybe ever. And what will follow this, if the Iranian regime stays in place, is mass torture and mass killing of the people. The Iranian regime is going to take revenge and cleanse the Persian population of anyone that ever said a peep about the government or even suggested they support a new government, a new administration, a new way of life. The Iranian regime will take their revenge, and it's going to be ugly. Let's remember, the Iranian regime is still killing people publicly. They just killed a 19-year-old wrestler, Olympic wrestler. They murdered him in cold blood in the public, hanging him because he said he would like freedom. He would like democracy. So what are we doing here, people, when it comes to people supporting this regime, or even hoping that Trump doesn't achieve his goals, the Israelis don't achieve their goals? What are we doing here? You're rooting for an absolute satanic government that is murdering 19-year-old Olympic wrestlers. What is a 19-year-old Olympic wrestler? What kind of threat is he to you as a regime that has a monopoly on violence? He's not a threat. You're killing him because you can, and that's just pure evil. But back to what I was saying, that's what the Persian people want. That's what they're banking on, is a complete regime change. What do the Iranians want? The Iranian regime, they want this to go on for a certain length of time to cost the Americans and the Europeans and the global economy pain. Okay, they want to cause them pain so that they don't want it just to end today, because if it ends today, they feel like they haven't caused these people that have launched this war, that is trying for this regime. They feel like they're going to do it again, right? So the Iranians want to cause a degree of pain to the United States, to the GCC countries, to the Gulf countries, to the Europeans, to say, we want this to be so bad for you that you never think about this again, or you don't think about it for decades to do this again. So they don't want it to end either. That's going to be their undoing at the end of the day. They're gambling a lot there, but that's what they're going for: a prolonged, painful war, much like the Russians are trying to avoid in Ukraine. But we won't even go there. Um, at the end of the day, the Iranian regime needs to survive. That is their win. Their win is to one day pop their heads out of their hole in the ground and say, "Look, we're still here. You were told we were gone. They were going to get rid of us. Look at, we fought these great powers that have so much more strength, but God, Allah is on our side, and we're still here. Therefore, we win." That's what terrorist organizations bank on, is surviving. The surviving is their win. Hamas, same thing in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon. They all just want to survive. That is their win, because they can just keep wreaking havoc and death onto their enemies. They just want to survive. That is their end goal.
Well, even that is changing, right?
Right.
Even that is changing based on what would a status quo or a symbolic achievement look like. The assassination of Khamenei seemed to have been a symbolic achievement in the eyes of the Trump administration, perhaps in the first 48 hours. Given that we're almost a month away from the war since it kicked off, new symbolic achievements need to be rationalized by the Trump administration. And we noticed, obviously, given that Iran is facing a war by a global superpower such as the United States, in addition and in parallel to a strong regional power such as Israel, survival in itself seems to be enough to be considered as a victory.
Another interesting comment
Always
President
is.
Trump made in his news conference last night. He said he presented what's happened in Iran as regime change and said the leaders are all very different. That might be the case, but is that a change, or is that a good thing, you think?
If one would have hoped for a detrimental and a drastic change in Iran, that's definitely not a change. It definitely weakened the political system in a regional perspective, an international perspective. If we were to look at the regional proxy network of Iran, it will definitely make Iran focus much more on its domestic survival in parallel to the external pressures it has been facing. But if we were to imagine a different Iran for the Iranian people, or a different political system in Iran that may be less hostile to some regional actors such as Lebanon and Iraq and beyond, that is definitely not a fundamental regime change.
No, he's right about that. It's not. I mean, you still have you have different people, but a regime change means the regime part of change, regime change, is that the ideology, the goals of the regime change. That's the difference between a regime change or a revolution and a coup. A coup is just replacing the leader. Sometimes you get a change of direction because you change the leader. But a coup is largely like replacing the leader, and that's it. If you have a coup and a change of direction, now you're talking more of a regime change. You're talking more of even a possible revolution. But he's right in what he's saying here. I think he's being responsible here in describing this well, because he did admit that he's basically saying that, like, Iran has this influence in Lebanon and in these other places, and when it comes to regime change, if that influence is going to remain, then you haven't really achieved your goal. You haven't at all achieved your goals of regime change. And he is also correct and accurate when he says that there has been enough damage done to this regime that they will have to, at least for the time being, focus internally, domestically inside Iran for at least the next little while, because they won't have the resources to support Hezbollah and Hamas in these other places. They won't be able to fund and energize and keep these proxies of Iran going in the same capacity they have been throughout these decades. So that goal has been achieved by the American administration and the Israeli administration, and even the GCC countries, who are totally on board all this, no matter what they say publicly. and they largely do say publicly that they hope there's a regime change. Actually, I shouldn't say they largely do. They somewhat do. You can read between the lines, but they have a lot of zealots in their countries too, so they have to be careful. But this guy is correct in that he's giving a good analysis here on that a regime change hasn't. Trump can say, and this is just Trump being Trump, right? You got to understand, if you once you understand Trump, you don't take him literally when he says we've actually already achieved regime change because we've killed 3 layers of the Iranian regime, and now they're on their 4th layer. But Trump knows and understands, that unless you change the goals of the people in power, you haven't actually achieved regime change in the capacity everybody understands it, everybody is looking for it to be achieved.
Now, this 15-point plan that Trump has reportedly come up with to end the war, which would include, nuclear disarmament in exchange for full sanctions relief, also opening up the Strait of Hormuz. Do you see the Iranians ever agreeing to any of those points?
So the 15-point plan, and let's just even bring up the things she mentioned. None of that is new. None of that is new. That's been something every American administration, every Israeli administration, every sensible European administration has strived for in the last 47 years. There's nothing new here. So you can guess where this is going. If you're putting forth a plan that has always been the thing you've asked for, demanded, it has always been the thing the Iranians go, nope, not going to happen, then you know where this is going. Okay. It's so then you got to ask yourself, why do this then? Why even bother putting this forward? Why even bother sitting down at the table? All kinds of reasons, possibilities. You don't know if it's a matter of restocking your supplies or whatever, or just PR. You're showing the world, hey, we're open to talking. Look, Europeans, you think look, Europeans, look, GCC, you say that we should talk this through, and we're trying, but we're not getting anywhere. We have no other options. That's what's going on here. It's just symbolic. Both sides know that unless there is a change on the ground in Iran, some sort of significant change in the war as far as turning the war or proceeding this war down a path where the Iranians are going to go away, then there's no point even talking about this stuff, but let's go through the motions anyway, because both sides want to show the world in this silly dance, because that's what we do in international affairs. We do this silly dance where we meet up and we both know what each other wants and needs and what we're going to give up and what we're not going to give up. But let's show the rest of the world that we have good intentions. And that's all that's going on here. So let's listen to what this guy has to say about the realistic nature of this 15-point plan and the realistic nature of Iran's acceptance of this plan, or any plan for that matter.
Those points would have made sense if the war hadn't happened, given that none of these points are new. Iranians have always been in negotiations with the West when it comes to their nuclear uranium program. Iranians have always been open to negotiate all of these things, perhaps not.
They haven't been open. Oh, sorry, he's right. They've been open to negotiate all these things because that's all they want to do is keep talking. They want to keep talking, keep negotiating, so that they run out the clock while they work towards their nuclear weapons. That's not a new game plan. Literally every single nation, like a North Korea, like a Pakistan, that has been secretly creating weapons, has been doing this in secret while quote unquote negotiating. So he's right. The Iranians will always want to negotiate and talk, but they don't want to talk and negotiate. Here's the important thing to know. They don't want to talk and negotiate to get to an outcome of settling this by negotiation. They want to keep negotiating, talking so that they can buy time to build their nuclear weapon program and get to the point where they get it and there's nothing anyone can do about it.
the proxy network in the region, because that's a very vague point. It's not as clear of a topic to discuss, such as the nuclear program or the ballistic missiles. Iran in itself always denies that it has anything to do with some of its network proxies in the region during their actions, particularly in Iraq, given that its association with Hezbollah is much more established and detrimental and official than it is with some of the factions in the PMF in Iraq.
Yeah, in other words, Iran simply can't deny their associations and affiliations and their support of Hezbollah. They can't deny it. It's not that they're doing it because they're honest. It's because they can no longer deny it. And while what he's talking about is there's another organization in Iraq that is essentially, effectively just another proxy group like Hezbollah for Iran, and they so far are able to deny it because there's still a bunch of people who aren't smart enough to see through it.
But currently, the way things look now, Iran, in the eyes of the world, needs to present itself as someone who's finding it very hard to trust the United States anymore, given that the first day of the war, was conducted while negotiations and while talks were happening. And from an Iranian perspective, they are proposing or claiming that they would need a much more official and an established security guarantees to prevent such a thing from happening anymore. But in an overall, overarching way, if the talks would be recognized by both sides, those 15 points aren't very drastic.
All right. Zaidoun, as always, very good to get your analysis.
Yeah, I don't know specifically what he's really talking about. Those 15 points aren't very drastic. I think it's his way of saying that they're meaningless because they are. Um, those points aren't new, like I already said. And if they're not new, then there's not going to be a new outcome from talking about them again. So it's just symbolic. It's completely symbolic. At the end of the day, what's going to happen here is this war is going to continue. It's going to continue with as much kinetic action, as much military action as need be for one side to start having a clear indication of them being in a position to win and win wholesale. And that means that, as I said at the onset of this, from day one, and have said millions of times prior to this war, this is going to take some boots on the ground. It always has been the case. And so I called it from day one and told everybody that would listen on this channel that boots on the ground are coming. And at the very least, it's going to be special forces. It looks like it may even be the Marines, and which is not atypical. The Marines are usually the tip of the sword, and that's what's coming. Boots on the ground are a must. You will not be able to achieve regime change with this regime. You can do it with other regimes around the world, particularly non-Islamic ones. Excuse me. Oh, geez, you shouldn't eat a hamburger before you do a video. These zealots who welcome death were never going to leave because they were threatened by death. Okay, so boots on the ground are must. The only question we have is whose boots on the ground. Okay. It will be American boots on the ground to some capacity. It could just be them taking the island, Karj Island, and putting pressure on the Iranians by completely taking control of their oil infrastructure and their ability to sell oil. That is a given. I think that's guaranteed. The question is will there be more than that? I think there has to be. The other question is that we're waiting to see is will the Israelis put boots on the ground? I think they have to. I think it would also help symbolically to tell the American public that hey, this is not true that you're fighting this war on our behalf. Look, we put troops on the ground. The second they put troops on the ground, that will take the breath out of a lot of these people in America, particularly on the right, like the Tucker Carlsons, that are saying nonsense like Trump is fighting a war, America's fighting a war on behalf of Israel, they will not be able to say that to any degree that's believable. They'll convince their diehard idiot cheerleader, no matter what, supporters, but anybody who's intellectually honest will see right through it. And frankly, Israel needs to put boots on the ground. They need to invest in this war. It is benefiting them tremendously to take out this regime, and they really do need to invest in this capacity. And there's not going to be any type of significant blowback in Israel for this, like there would be and probably will be in the U.S. So they really should put boots on the ground, much more so even than America should. It'll happen. I'm guessing it's going to happen in tandem. It's going to happen together. I think also the smartest thing I would do if I was planning this from day one is I would also bring boots on the ground from Saudi Arabia military. I would bring it from even the Qatari military. I would bring it from as many GCC countries as possible. And then you would actually get NATO as well, boots on the ground. Now, you wouldn't even need a lot. What you just need is a small amount of all of them to show, to isolate, truly isolate the Iranian regime and take out so much of their propaganda element that they're being picked on, that they're fine, they just wanted peace, this war was hoisted upon them and they're the good guy and the rest are the aggressors. If you bring an entire group, a big group, an alliance of GCC, imagine this, GCC countries, Saudi Arabia, military, all these GCC countries, or a lot of them, with Israeli troops working together, with American troops working together, with NATO troops. Think of the PR after that. Think of, like, you're just gonna win by momentum at that point. The Iranian regime will have nothing left to say, and they'll have nothing left to do. They'll be completely isolated, and this war will be over. I'm hoping President Trump and Netanyahu strategize this in the way that I would have from the start, and that's how I would have done it. I wouldn't have launched this war without a guarantee from all of these countries that they're committed to bringing troops on the ground and getting rid of this disgusting, vile, murderous, satanic Islamic occupation of Iran, and changing the Middle East for decades to come for the better for everyone. This is what needs to happen. And above and beyond that, freeing the good Persian people, and I've only met good Persian people in my life, freeing them from this hostage situation that they've been in, this disgusting, sad situation, and making sure to take revenge for the murder, for the disgusting slaying and murder of this 19-year-old wrestler, these girls that have been murdered and raped because their veil has fallen, girls being thousands of them. The revenge for the girl who lost her life only a few years back that inspired those uprisings in Iran, for revenge for her, and take these son of a bitches, these bastards, these fucking devils in this Islamic regime, send them to the hell they are so desiring to go to. Thank you for watching. This has been another Platinum Truth reaction video. I'm Mike Martin. Please hit the subscribe button, the like button, both, one of the two, whatever it is. You can help the channel. You can keep the channel's momentum going. I appreciate it, and we'll talk soon. I'll be back soon.